Hi, this array example asks the user for a number and then randomizes a number between 1 and 10 and puts it into an array that is as long as the number that's given. And then we find the average of those numbers and then output any number above the average. So let's just break this down a little bit. So right here is my array declaration. So this one here, the name of the array is numbers, and the array length goes from 1 until nums. So as soon as we run the program, this array has no defined length. But right before we declare the array, we ask the user, how many numbers would you like to find the average of? And that's where we get nums. So numbers has to be an integer, because you can't have a half an element or a decimal, wouldn't make any sense for array elements, so it has to be a whole number. So we don't have any checks to see if they give a negative or anything like that, but we'll just make the assumption, just keep this simple, that they will provide a positive number. And all the numbers are, there won't be any real numbers, but we have defined any of the numbers can be real. So now we get into our for loop. So say for g, we go from 1, and here's a function built into Turing that takes one parameter, one argument here, which is our array numbers. Okay, so it will return the highest, the upper bound of the array. So no matter how long this array is, this for loop will loop that many times. It'll go from 1 to however many elements the array has. So our program is completely flexible. If we do 5, then this loop's going to go 5 times. If we do 500, then this loop's going to go 500, because it's all dependent on what the user puts into nums. So it's just a chain reaction. We put nums in here, then it gets inserted here, and then this function will take this array and figure out what number that is. So at numbers at each spot will be randomized between 1 and 10, and then to find the average we have to total up all the values inside the loop, so total is going to keep track of that. So once the loop's done, then the average will be equal to the total of all the numbers divided by all the elements, the number of numbers entered. Okay, so once again we have to use upper because we don't know how long or how many numbers the user is going to pick. So everything's completely flexible. And this just outputs what the average was. So because we're randomizing, the average is going to be somewhere between 4 and 6 pretty much every time. And then we're going to do an output of all the numbers above the average. Okay, so just because everything's random, if we do 10, I'm assuming there'll be 5 numbers above the average, 5 or 6. But that part's really insignificant. This is just an example of how you can use an array to do something like this. So I'm going to run this. I'm going to choose 50, and then so the average was 4.64, and then Turing listed all the numbers that were above 4.64. Okay, hope you enjoyed this lesson.